Brothers and sisters, it is so awesome to be with you. What a great, great crowd. Where are the Michigan folks? Woo! Welcome to our great state of Michigan. Where do we have Flint folks in the house? Oh, there's some. Woo! Yay, our awesome, incredible, brave, resilient Flint letter carriers. Thank you for having me here. Thank you, President Rolando, for inviting me to your incredible conference. It is super extra special for me to be here for a few reasons. Like was mentioned, I come from a union family. My mom was a proud union teacher here in Michigan. My father was a General Motors employee who benefited from that bravery and resilience and resistance of those UAW workers. My brother is a labor lawyer who represents unions and workers in Washington, D.C. And now that I've written this book and am an author, I am part of the National Writers Union, an affiliate of the UAW. So we are a proud union family, and it was our larger union family, all of you, that was the first and most vocal to respond to what was happening in Flint. It was our plumbers and our teachers and our auto workers and our nurses and our postal workers and our letter carriers who were there and who were there first. You helped with water drives, and you went door to door to make sure that our messages, our critical messages, went out to the people who needed to hear them because you were trusted by the community. And just as important, the union movement got it immediately. You understood what was happening in Flint, and you understood that it was a symptom of a larger problem that was happening throughout our nation. And what happened in Flint is very much a story of crisis. It is a tragic, tragic story, but it is a story of resistance, and I'm going to share a little of that with you today. And it is a story very much of hope. The Flint water crisis is probably the most important, most emblematic environmental and public health disaster of this young century. It is about what happens when the very people responsible for keeping us safe care more about money and power than they care about us or our children. But what happened in Flint is not isolated. It is about the deeper crises we are facing right now in our nation. It is about a breakdown in democracy, from voter disenfranchisement to gerrymandering to mass incarceration. It is about the breakdown of our critical infrastructure due to inequality and austerity. It is about environmental injustices that are happening everywhere that disproportionately impact our poor and our brown. It is about a disrespect for science, which we see right now happening nationally. But most importantly, Flint is a story about our abandonment of our civic responsibility, about our deep obligation as human beings to care and to provide for all of us, not just our privileged kids, but for all children. If we stop believing that government can protect our public welfare and keep all children safe, what do we have left? Who are we as a society? But I want to take you back to a different Flint, and you saw that different Flint. You saw that in 1936, brave, resilient, disobedient Flint workers sat down and occupied car plants for 44 days in the Michigan winter. You guys are enjoying our Michigan summer, but in the winter it's cold. And they cut off heat to those workers, and they beat them, and they sent company thugs. But our workers in those auto plants stood brave, and they stood strong, demanding their share of prosperity, demanding their share of that American dream. And arguably, that American dream was born in Flint. What happened there, that grand bargain, informed wages across the country, if not for years, but decades, and that was born in Flint. And at one point, which is so hard to believe, Flint had the highest per capita income in the country. And because of that, as a doctor, we saw the best public health indices in the country. People moved to Flint for great jobs, great living wage jobs, great infrastructure, great schools, great benefits, great everything. And that was because of what those workers did. Flint was hailed as a promised land. And people, immigrants from all over the world, from the Great Migration North, moved to Flint for that dream. But what followed in Flint, as you know, was decades of crisis. Decades of disinvestment, unemployment, poverty, racism, decline of unions, population loss, crumbling schools, and almost every disparity you can think of. In large part, it was a man-made crisis for decades because of bad policy decisions. And today in Flint, our injustice problems, our inequality problems are the most striking. As a pediatrician, our kids in Flint will actually live 15 years, 15 years less than children in a neighboring zip code because of these disparities. And this is no one's dream. And as a pediatrician, I'm in the business of dreams. It is my job to make sure that our children are healthy today, but it is more importantly my job to protect the potential of all of our children. And what was happening in our water was threatening the tomorrows of all of our kids. And our Flint kids did nothing wrong besides being born in a city that was almost bankrupt, that lost democracy because we were taken over by state-appointed emergency management. And that emergency manager had one duty, and that duty was austerity. It was to save money no matter what the cost. And they severed a half-a-century relationship with fresh, pre-treated Great Lakes water. So you guys are in Michigan, you guys are in Detroit, you guys are now surrounded by the largest source of fresh water in the world. Where we are in Michigan, so we're the Mitten State, we are literally surrounded by the Great Lakes, which is the largest source of fresh water in the world. And here's Flint, right here, pretty much in the middle of the largest source of fresh water in the world. Yet the people of Flint, under state-appointed emergency management, weren't allowed to get good water. And they severed that fresh, pre-treated, high-quality Great Lakes water, and instead, this poor city, this city of predominantly minority people, started to drink Flint River water, which was not treated properly. And the emergency manager, I want you to recognize that the Flint story is also very much a democracy story. At one point in 2013, half of African Americans in our state were under emergency management, compared to 2% of whites. A grossly undemocratic process. And the heroic people of Flint said this was not right. And they raised their jugs of brown water. Yet they were dismissed and ignored. Even when General Motors, which was born in Flint and still has plants in Flint, stopped using this water because it was corroding engine parts. Think about that. Our water was corroding engine parts, but the people of Flint were literally told to relax. Jesse Jackson called Flint a crime scene. Michael Moore, who was from Flint, said this water crisis was not a mistake, calling it a racial crisis that would not have happened in a richer or whiter city. So that is very much the story of crisis. But what I want to share with you and why I wrote this book and why I am here is a lesson that we all need to hear and a lesson that is so important for right now. Flint is a story of how we came together and fought back, how we resisted. As you heard, Flint is a place where we have a history of resistance, where many people have been pushed down and many have risen, where many have fought the good fight, resisted and won. And we resisted, the moms, the activists, the pastors, the journalists, the scientists, and more. We were fighting for the future that lives and grows inside our children. And finally, our science, our persistence, our disobedience, our loudness, our stubbornness spoke truth to power, exposed this man-made, austerity-driven crisis, and the house of cards began to fall. And since that moment, we have been on a path towards recovery, and we are building a model public health program to best preserve the tomorrows, the dreams of our children. But to truly fix Flint, and Flint's everywhere, it will take a rebuilding of that American dream, that grand bargain that was first born in Flint. Because as a pediatrician, the most important medication that I can prescribe to our children is living wage jobs for their parents. It is lifting our community out of poverty. And it is not just a labor issue nor an economic issue. It is a public health issue. It is an American dream issue. And in that city where that American dream was first born, we are moving forward as we strive for equality and justice and opportunity. We are not going to be defined by this crisis, but rather by our response. A response that proactively and positively invests in our children and their parents, with good jobs for our childcare workers, our teachers, our nurses, our plumbers, our letter carriers. Because as a pediatrician, I know that parents with good jobs make for healthier kids. And that gets to my favorite lesson of this story, which is so much more than just being a story about Flint. It is about all of us, and it is about who we are and who we want to be. It is about the people and places that we choose not to see. So the title of my book is called What the Eyes Don't See. It's very much about we don't see lead in water, we don't see the effects of lead, but it is about all of us who go blind to people and problems and places that we choose not to see. And it is a rallying cry to remind us that it is our responsibility to open our eyes as human beings and to open each other's eyes to these problems. But being awake is not enough. We must take action for what is right, to care and to provide for each other in solidarity, especially for our children. This story is a testament to the idea that individuals working together, that's what unions are all about, working together can make a difference. And this is the union movement's struggle. Your struggle is our struggle, because the fight against privatization of the post office, the public post office, is the same as our fight to preserve our public spaces and our public resources. And it is the same fight as our struggle in Flint to fight for affordable and safe public water. And that means all of us, all of you, have a role to play, no matter who you are or what you do or where you are in this great nation, or even how you ended up in this country. Whether your families have been here for centuries or you came as an immigrant like my family. I came to this country when I was 4, escaping dictatorship and tyranny, and very much had that American dream realized for me and my family. And that immigrant story is proudly weaved into this story, because in this time in our nation where immigrant is a bad word, we need to see the contribution of immigrants to this great society. We are all immigrants. So I challenge all of you to come together, to each be a piece of the answer, not just for Flint, but Flints everywhere. As one of my heroes said, Martin Luther King, we may have come here on different ships, and I definitely came on a different ship, but we are all in the same boat. Our kids need you. Our kids need you in this fight. Our kids everywhere need you. So on behalf of the dreams of all of our children, I want to thank you, my brothers and sisters, for being awake, for being alert, for being loud, for being stubborn, and for fighting for all of our children. Thank you, guys. Thank you. Thank you.